The fighters are attacking. I wonder what those Star Destroyers are waiting for. That blast came from the
Dracozolt VMAX.
That thing's operational.
It's a trap!
That's right, Admiral Akbar. It's a spark trap. And that spark trap came from Dracozolt VMAX, a really, really cool anti-meta deck, I think we could call it, that has risen to popularity over the last couple of days thanks to a stellar performance by Eric Smash, a player in the recent Lux Series tournament. He almost made top 8 with this thing, and I can understand why. Spark Trap deals 60 damage for 1 lightning energy, and then if your opponent attacks into you next turn, then you deal an extra 120 damage. It's very reminiscent of Shell Trap from our Turtonator GX way back in the day, if you remember that one. And this deck is really, really good because it stops those decks that half hit and try and win the game that way. Things like Jolteon or Dragapult VMAX, both half-hit VMAX Pokemon, so if you're able to deal just as much damage as you get dealt, then you are definitely on the way to winning the game. The way that you stop your opponent from taking prizes whilst you are taking them yourself is by using a myriad of healing options that this deck has going for it. Cards like Hyper Potion, Regular Potion is in this deck. We've also got Moo Moo Cheese, a card that I never thought would see any competitive play, and the new Lucky Ice Pop, as well as a supporter card called Cheryl, which you've probably seen around the traps recently. It's been doing a pretty good job. This deck is actually pretty fun to play. It is genuinely good, especially against those half-hitting decks, so we'll take Dracozolt out onto the ladder and see if we can't win ourselves a game. So we've got ourselves a game here, and I've increased the speed of the gameplay in post. This is a post-production performance here, just because these games take a long time. You're not dealing a huge amount of damage, and if your opponent is smart, then they'll be able to play around what we are doing. But it's still interesting to talk through, so we're going to do that. We got an energy attachment to our Dracozolt, which is all that we really want, and we have a draw supporter for next turn, and we are playing up against Dragapult V, which is obviously one of those Pokemon that is only going to be able to deal so much damage in our next couple of turns. So getting a Dracozolt here is really, really good. We have Boss's Orders if we want it. I think we're happy to just sit on this and set up our Spark Trap. And now, if at any point our opponent attacks into our only Dracozolt in play, we will be able to deal 120 damage back to them, which is incredibly dangerous. Now, our opponent is thinking through what they're doing quite a lot, because obviously they need to come up with a different strategy. They can't just hit into me every single time, because otherwise they will find themselves losing the game. But if they don't attack into me, then obviously we are going to win eventually. So the question becomes, for our opponents, how do they want to go about getting the victory? And for Dragapult, it's actually not too difficult, because they have access to a special energy that deals damage back to us. So pretty solid. We're going to use a Lucky Ice Pop to try and heal some of that damage off. We've got Potion and Moo Moo Cheese as well, so we'll get rid of most of that damage, and then we can just research our hand away. We've got another couple of potions here, which is fantastic. We'll use the Ice Pop first, because if we flip heads, we can obviously get that card back into our hand. We haven't managed to do that, but we do have Cheryl in our hand, so next turn we can definitely heal some damage. Plus, we have Speed Lightning Energy to get that energy attachment back on there. So now our opponent needs to start figuring out, okay, how am I actually going to win this game? And Dragapult has the Horror Psychic Energy to deal damage back to us. It's got the Inteleons to do pings, so it can get there. And you can see our opponent is electing to just hit us with the pings. They don't want to set that Spark Trap off, so we can just hit back into them. We're dealing 60 damage. The most that they're dealing next turn is 40, unless they choose to attack into me, in which case I take 3 prizes, so I'm not too worried about that. Again, we can just heal off this little bit of damage that they've dealt. We're going to use Power Pad and put Boss back into the deck, because that will be useful later on, and since we've drawn into an energy, I'm happy to use the Speed Lightning here. That means that we can potentially get ourselves a little bit closer to our second attack, which realistically we are never going to use in these kind of games. 4 energy, manually attaching them is very, very difficult to do, but it is possible to get those extra big hits that you need. So hopefully it all works out. It looks like we are being Marnied here, which means that we're going to need to find a Cheryl off of our top deck next turn, and an energy as well. But we've been lucky in the sense that we've drawn into potions and hyper potions, plus a Poké Gear, so we can try and find one later on. Now, our opponent is setting up a second Dragapult, which is obviously going to be very useful for them. They do need to avoid giving up prizes where possible, and that Dragapult, obviously, next turn will be knocked out, so they don't want to leave that in the active. Now they're trying to decide, do I want to hit into this Dracozolt or not? And to be honest, they probably don't. And if they don't, then I'm going to just heal all the damage off that they've just done. And Lucky Ice Pop still flipping tails. We can see why that card is not necessarily super great. Professor's research off of our Pokegear is good. We could Hyper Potion here, but I'd rather not risk missing energy. And it looks like we have managed to find it. We've got another Dracozolt here, which could be good. We could play that down. Our opponent doesn't have access to a huge amount of item search next turn, so it might be worth doing. But instead, we'll just Spark Trap. We've got the energy, we've got the Cheryl. As long as everything stays the same, it's time for a Marnie. I can't actually remember whether that happens or not. This is post-production, I should be able to tell you. Let's go for some more Lucky Ice Pops, and here we go. Now we've flipped aheads. We dealt that extra little bit of damage back to us, which is fantastic. I am going to play down the Dracozolt now. I'm going to get myself a couple of extra cards into play, and then we can go for another Dracozolt. Now, the issue here is if they do have Boss in their hand, they will be able to get around our Spark Trap, but I'm actually not too worried about that. If they do get into the Spark Trap, it means that they're more likely to start thinning through cards in their deck, putting more pressure on themselves to be successful. Plus, they only have 4 cards in hand, so how likely is it? It's actually very likely. So we see that Dragapult V is going to be able to attack this turn. I can't actually remember whether they go into the VMAX here. I think they might actually, to get some damage off on the Dracozolt on the bench. And yes, they do that. So they Max Phantom here, do 130 to the active, and then 50 more to the bench. I've got Moo Moo Cheese, which is going to heal 30 damage off both of my Pokemon. I can also use Primeval Beak here just to get the knockout. And at the moment, we've got 2 prizes remaining, which we'll be able to get on the Dracozolt, the Dragapult on the bench, which is great. Or if they evolve it into a VMAX, then they would get 2 prizes, but we've got a V on the bench that we can utilize. So I'm not feeling too bad at this point. Obviously, there is a bit of a risk here, but I can never lose both of these Pokemon in the same turn, and my opponent's going to want to try and get a knockout on this Dracozolt V whilst they can, because at the moment, they are not looking like they are in a good position when it comes to being able to win this game. Now the pressure is starting to heat up. They've got double Quick Shooting Inteleon on the bench, plus they are going to deal an extra 50 damage with Max Phantom to my benched Dracozolt, but they've used Raihan, so they can't Marnie, which means that I can just Cheryl and attach an energy next turn. So even though I do lose 2 prizes, I'm going to have a fresh Dracozolt VMAX with an energy on it, ready to attack into our opponent's Dragapult. The difference now is that we are both dealing 60 damage every turn, and it looks like they actually elected not to use Max Phantom there, which is an odd choice. I don't know why they didn't do that. They just attacked into the Dracozolt in the active, and we're just going to do exactly what we said we were going to do, but with 2 Dragozolts in play. I guess they wanted to use Boss's orders, which it looks like they are going to do, but even then, we've managed to Cheryl off most of the damage, so I'm not feeling too bad here at all. We can attach an energy to the active and then Kabu, and hopefully we can find another Cheryl at some point in the near future. We're going to use our Evo Incense here to get rid of the Dracozolt and then shuffle. That's fine. We're going to draw 4 cards. 4 cards is fine. We're going to use another Evo Incense just to thin these cards out of the deck, and then we will Spark Trap. And now we are, what's that, 240. We're 80 damage away from winning this game. 2 more attacks from us will win the game, but obviously they can theoretically get a knockout on 1 or 2 of our Dracozolts in the near future. They will be able to attack into this Dracozolt this turn, and if they choose to Quick Shooting the active, which looks like they probably will, then they will be able to get the knockout. So they're going to take some prizes, but it will mean that I'm actually going to be able to move... they're putting all of the damage on with the quick shooting here. What they're going to try and do is they're going to pass, and they're going to try and boss into the benched one next turn. That's what they're going to try and do. It's hard. I've forgotten what's happening in this game. I really should remember. But you know what? It's not happening at the moment. They might even try and attack with that Inteleon on the bench now that I'm thinking about it. They've got Scoop Up Net, so they're going to use that to pick up one of their quick shooting Inteleons and give themselves access to Drizzile again. Very intelligent. And then they are retreating into a fresh Dragapult just so that I can't take any knockouts. We've found a Professor's Research if we want it. I might actually take the Pokemon Center... Oh, no, we're going to take the Research. Pokemon Center Lady is cool, but it doesn't really achieve anything. And we've just drawn in to a couple of very useful cards. Cheryl and Energy are both quite good. Now, our opponent can take 3 prizes this turn. They can obviously gust and get around the Spark Trap if they want to, or they could attack with the Inteleon on the bench if they please as well. To be honest, I'm happy with either way. We have Cheryl and Energy. There's almost no way that our opponent can take 2 knockouts this turn, so we are always going to be in a good spot. Especially if we keep our hand the same as it currently is. Our opponent could Marnie here off of the Drizzile, and obviously that's what they will do. So we're going to lose our Cheryl and our Energy here, which is a little bit disappointing. Our opponent knows we have a Research in hand though, so they obviously saw that happening, and it looks like we've drawn into another Cheryl. So a top deck into another Energy actually gives us a really, really strong spot in this game. They're going to shred into our Dracozolt, but we deal some extra damage back to this Dragapult VMAX. I'm not sure whether that's a bug or not, because Shred obviously goes through effects. I don't know. It's one of those things. It could be anything, to be honest. I think that at this stage, we probably Carbu, we shuffle our deck and try and get into Energy and Cheryl for next turn, which we have managed to do. Oh, I wonder what that bing bong was. Anyway, that's probably someone subscribing to the channel, or doing something on Twitch or something. I don't know. But this is a good point, actually, to remind me to tell you to like the video. I put a lot of effort into the intro of this video, so if nothing else, like it for that. Okay, now our opponent cannot deal enough damage to knock us out this turn. I'm 99% sure that they can actually get to 300 damage or something similar. What is it, 320? They're going to leave me on 10 HP? They could have the Zigzagoon to win the game? I can't remember. Well, I mean, I do remember, because I win this game, so they obviously don't have it. It's not 320, they're just going to pass. That's fine by me, because we have Cheryl, we're going to heal our damage off, we're going to attach an Energy, and then we're going to Spark Trap, and that will put us in a position where we just need to attack this Dragapult one more time, and we will win the game. They could attack into us, but they will deal damage to themselves, which they obviously don't want to do. So they could retreat this Dragapult if they want and attack with something else. They can't attack with the other Dragapult because the other Dragapult will get knocked out by the Spark Trap. So the question is, what do you attack with? I suppose the only logical option is that Inteleon on the bench. But to be brutally honest, we have the boss in hand, so no matter what our opponent does here, we can use boss's orders on the Dragapult, Spark Trap for the knockout, and win the game. And even on double speed, this took a long time. So how good is this deck really? Well, I'm going to give this one a B for playability. It's definitely good, but it does have some very bad matchups. Fighting types and Sylveon are also pretty rough. Consistency-wise, it does what it wants to do most of the time, but is that enough to win? Sometimes it's not. Value, super cheap. It's only got 1 card. The VMAX itself is actually not that expensive at all. And fun-wise, I've given this one a B, but you know what? It could potentially be an A. It just takes a long time to play through some of the games. So another really cool deck there that you could definitely play on the standard ladder and win yourself some games. Dragapult and Jolteon are very popular, and this deck beats them, which is very good. Hopefully you've enjoyed this one. If you have, like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, send this video to your grandmother so that she can watch it, because she'll enjoy it. It's got Star Wars in the front, she'll like it. Anyway, thank you very much everyone for coming, and I will see you next time for more from the Sableyes.